Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Curtains Up, where we dive into the magic behind the curtain. Today, we're thrilled to have a very special guest joining us, a visionary voice in the Seattle theater scene. Please join me in welcoming Moumita Bhattacharya, a talented theater director and choreographer whose work has brought powerful stories to life on stages across the city. From bold reimaginings to uplifting new works, she brings a unique blend of creativity, leadership, and passion to every production. I was fortunate to watch one of her recent plays, House of Joy, at the Seattle Public Theater, and it was an amazing production from start to finish. House of Joy was even nominated in the Gregory Awards for award nominations in 11 categories. We're so excited to dive into the process, hear behind the scenes stories, and explore what it means to direct in one of the most vibrant theater communities in the country. Let's raise the curtain and get started. Ms. Bhattacharya, thank you so much for joining us today. And how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great, and thank you for having me, Rohan. I'm really excited to be talking to you.
Of course. Jumping straight in, could you tell us a bit about your journey into theater and directing?
Yeah, absolutely. My journey actually started not with theater, but with dance. I started learning Indian classical dance from the time I was 3, and that was many, many, many decades ago. And the great thing about Indian classical dance is it comes from a very strong grounding in storytelling and theater. Abhinaya, the word abhinaya, is very integral, and abhinaya means the act of emoting and in the process of telling a story, and it's very integral to the syllabi of any sort of Indian classical dance. So that's where I started, and it very honestly had been just dance and storytelling through dance until I don't know, until I came to Seattle, which was almost 18 years ago. And then I had the opportunity to actually start directing, and I again started with dance. And very slowly, it morphed into the whole gamut of theater. So it was very organic, it was not very intentional. It was a journey through dance and movement, really.
Yeah, especially, I actually know about Abhinaya because, previously, in one of my first episodes, I actually talked about Abhinaya and how it contributed to the storytelling of theater in India. So, finding the passion through that is it's kind of like yeah, it's meant to be. Like, yes, going through the emote and like how the storytelling comes through dancing does lead towards acting. So I think that's pretty cool. And then what drew you, like, if anything, specifically to Seattle's theater scene? Is it just because you went to Seattle, you wanted to try it out, or was there something else?
No, I live in Seattle, right? So that's
Yeah.
that's kind of where it all began for me. But I started at this nonprofit for South Asian performing artists called Pratidhwani. And when I first came here, I was looking for a platform where I could go and just dance, pretty much. And I found Pratidhwani, I auditioned, I got into the dance team. Luckily for me, I'm very grateful to them. Very quickly, I kind of got into leading the dance wing of Pratidhwani. And thereafter, we as an organization morphed into doing shows which would tell a story but have some movement and dance in it. So that's kind of what the journey was. But for the longest time, it was just done for a primarily South Asian audience. It was the first time that I actually went outside of that audience was 2017, and Act Theater is one of the biggest theaters in town. I kind of reached out to them saying I would love to be able to bring a South Asian story to your stage. And they were very, very open to the idea. They also had a program going at the time called Act Lab, where they'd collaborate with another smaller organization and give them the chance to come do a show here. So in 2017 is the first time that I actually went big, if you will, and directed a show at Act, which ran for 14 days or 4 weeks, 14 shows, And yeah, that's where sort of the bigger audience and bringing the story outside of the community and taking it to an audience that had never heard these stories before. That's where it started.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually had a theater that was very actually initial to the open reception because like, if it's like unfortunately more common for new ideas to get rejected. So having like a more receptive community here is like it's really good. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes, it is. And, the Seattle audience has been amazing at the randomest of places ever since 2017. And I've only done, 3 shows since then. But at the randomest of places, I would run into people who have seen the show. And the first thing they ask is, when's the next one? Right? Because these are stories that are not told every day. And the audience in Seattle is receptive and genuinely interested in hearing these stories and sort of getting a glimpse of the culture and the dance or and the costumes and all of that. So just very grateful to the city for that.
Yeah, especially because like the stories you can tell and like stories that Seattle theater chooses to show, most of them aren't like local to here, right? Like for example, House of Joy, it's not a story that Seattle audiences are used to, yet people still come to watch it because of the fact that they're not used to it. So I think
Yeah.
the maybe not cultural mixing, but the mixing of stories that are unique versus stories that you hear a lot. That's also one thing that is very beneficial to Seattle.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's I'm really grateful to be in a city that does that, right? So yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. Um, and then this is so you are both a director and a choreographer, right? So what are some of your biggest artistic influences as a director?
Uh, to be very honest with you, it comes from everywhere. I cannot name a theater director that has, completely changed the way I look at theater. And also because the brand of theater I direct, I have not seen it anywhere else because it's a combination of the usual play acting, if you will, with dance and movement in a way that is not a musical where you're not singing. So it's slightly different. But having said that, I think I've learned from cinema. I have learned from just pure classical dance. I have learned from a lot of the directors in the area. Like he's no longer in the area, but I'm a huge fan of John Langs, who used to be the artistic director at ACT. There was this director of South Asian origin called Rosa Joshi, if I'm remembering the name right, who's directed a lot of plays in the area, and she was brilliant. Uh, I learned from every piece of anything that I watch on stage. I'm hugely influenced by a lot of the dance that happens at Nrityagram in India and the way they like to tell stories. Um, and yeah, it's anything and anyone, and I really, unfortunately, I don't have one person or two people I can name, but it's a matter of absorbing whatever you're watching wherever. I have even learned a lot from just watching high school musicals or plays that have been staged in the area that, my friends have invited me to. So it's a constant process of absorption, I think.
Yeah, I think having multiple sources of inspiration isn't unusual because of just how much like how many good inspirations there are. So many people are contributing to the Seattle like theater scene, and it's just amazing to sort of like see it all unfold.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that.
And then this is also a question for your directing experience. What's a detail from a production that, or from any production that most audiences may have missed, but meant a lot to you?
Oh, there are so many. It's and more than a detail, so the process is like this, right? I have previously written plays as well. You write or you adopt a play, you sit down and it takes on its own life when you sit down with the actors and go through it. And then it comes to stage and you start rehearsing it, and again, it evolves. And then an audience comes in and it stuns and shocks you because they will laugh at places you've never expected them to laugh. They will, gasp at things that you never thought were gaspable.
Like you
They
thought were normal.
Yeah. And then they will not laugh at things that you thought were very funny, right? Or there was, for example, a scene in House of Joy where it's a very poignant scene. And, this person is kind of crying, and the character is shocked and in pain. And there have been so many shows in which the audience has laughed because of a line she says.
Uh,
And it's been such a shock to the actor who played the role and to me and some of the other co-actors. But you don't know what they hear, right? How they interpret, how they take what you're showing and make their own stories in their heads. So, and it's amazing and amusing at the same time to see that. So,
Yeah, my director calls it audience brain, and it's like it's similar yet different because the way I look at it, it's like the audience will never know. The audience doesn't know the script, only you know the script. So like depending on that, you can choose sort of like what the audience sees and how you choose to portray it. So like if, for example, you miss a line, or if there's something that you want to be seen as funny, you can make it be seen as funny. It's up to you because you're technically the one driving the scene or the show, so to see.
absolutely. And as a director, as actors on stage, you do your best, but then you do not know the person who comes in and watches it. And the interpretations and the the stories of their own life that they juxtapose with what they're watching and what it becomes for them. It's always fascinating for me to, especially for something like House of Joy, which had a lot of, the playwright had left a lot of things open to interpretation. It's always fascinating for me to sit down and listen to the audience later and hear what they saw. And a lot of the times, it was
It's
shocking.
different than what you were
Yeah,
expecting.
yeah, absolutely. Because people bring their own lives into how they see things, and yeah, it's so fascinating to hear that.
Yeah, like when I'm in plays and I ask my friends, "Hey, did you notice this?" They're like, "No," but I noticed this, and they'll notice something that I thought was totally inconsequential, and it's like, "Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah." Um, so and then in because you're both a director and a choreographer, were there any especially challenging scenes or musical numbers to choreograph that you know of, and if so, what made them so tricky?
So I will actually take a step back from a scene or a musical number and talk a little bit about how I approach a play like this. So House of Joy, for example, if you read the play, there is no movement in it. There is maybe a little bit where people fight, but that's it. That's very it's very literary, if I may use the word, where there is a fight and that happens and that's the movement. End of story. The play you saw had a lot of movement in it. The house itself were people and they were moving.
Moving, yeah.
So to go from the written play to that was the most challenging thing for me because what I did, my process was I sat down, I read the play, I thought about the house being people, and then how do you show it? How do you, when do they move? What do they do? Without it being gimmicky or dancey, if you know what I mean, so that the story flows the way the playwright envisioned for it to flow. That was the most challenging thing. That took me 2 months, 2+ months, I think, to think through. And then when you start putting that into, and let me talk about an example for people who've not seen the play. Uh, the first scene of the play plays out, and then the audience sees these four dancers dance in, and there is music, and there is intrigue that builds. And they still don't know what these dancers represent. And then the second scene starts flowing in where a character is talking about the house and is pointing at the house as they talk. And then slowly the audience starts making a connection that, oh, this is the house. And it maybe takes them another 10 minutes to really understand and absorb and establish that house. Doing that and doing that for a 2.5 hour play throughout is hard.
Yeah, no, so like especially just like trying to make sure you're understanding what the playwright wanted, and then maybe it's different than your vision, right? Because a director's vision and a playwright's vision, they don't always have to be the same. You can still have, like you can still have a good product, and that's why I think there's so many different variations of the same show, because one director could have seen something differently than the other, and that leads to equally good variations. They're both really good. They just chose to tell the stories in different ways. Like having the house be like a moving, living thing almost. It felt sort of more human, right? So I think that was a good choice, and it was very well demonstrated. I believe.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. And I think the playwright in this case, I honestly don't know if they envisioned for it to be played by people. Probably not, because the play has been staged before at two other places, and it was not humans doing it. But the way the playwright has written about the house, it feels human because the house has a soul and a character, and
And
the house
reactions.
and reactions, and the house evolves, with the flow of the story. And so it was just very natural for, or at least in my head, to make it human, right? To have humans do this,
To have a
rather.
human element inside the house, just to make sure that it's actually part of what the story you're saying is.
Absolutely, yep.
And then what do you look for performers, or what do you look for in performers during the casting or rehearsal process, especially for a movement heavy show such as House of Joy?
I think the first thing, even before looking for performers, one needs to be very clear in their head about what each role is for and what they need to be doing and not doing. There are some very cut and dry technical skills that I look for. So if it is someone with who has to move on stage or actually do dance on stage, there are certain skill sets needed. There may be some excellent dancers, but a lot of the dance that I show on stage is grounded in Indian classical dance, and they need to be able to do that.
Or
Now,
there could be like they could be like excellent singers but act not so good at acting.
when it comes to actors, it I have never done a musical, so I've never needed singers. But I for actors, it has to be they need to be able to be the character, not play the character. And I think there is a very firm but fine distinction where someone I have seen so many actors come in and maybe, you know, without the requisite experience or whatever it is, and they're trying to be trying to play the character. And that is very different from you coming in and being the character and becoming the character. So that's what I look for when I cast. If you remember, one of the hardest characters to cast in the show was Salima, who we went through so many auditions for that, and the actor we finally landed on was, of course, brilliant. But it was a difficult role to cast for. It was a
It's a
character.
difficult role to play. It's very like it's not strict, right? It's very like the definition of how to play the character is very loose, at least from what I saw.
Yes, very fluid. For people who've not read the play or seen the play, it is a character who defined themselves. I am a woman. I am a man. I am both, right? And so, who do you cast? How do you cast? And the person who actually ended up playing that, Varun Kant, he walked in, and you never felt you saw Varun. Varun
He was
was
always Salima. Yeah.
Varun was always Salima when he auditioned,
I
and
remember talking to him so after the play, and I was like I asked him how are you able to play this character so effortlessly, because it's a character that seems to like take a lot of effort, and he told me that being the character took a lot, and he found himself slipping into the character even when he's not at rehearsal. So
yeah.
like when he'd go to work, he'd sometimes slip into the personality, and his coworkers would be so weirded out. And I think that's kind of like crazy because of how much of a demanding role it is, such that like it's affecting his personal life as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another great example of this is, the character of Hamida in the play, who is kind of sort of happy go lucky, I don't think too much, um, not super smart person in the play. And Hamida was played by Tanvi Kale, who historically has been in all my shows and has played the strongest, most powerful women that you can think of. And having Tanvi, and in life, in real life, Tanvi is a very strong woman. And having her slip into that character, the audience does not know this, but I know what it must have taken for Tanvi to play that very I'm rolling with everything and not thinking too much. And those are very, very hard choices to make on stage. And she did it effortlessly. So for the audience, when you go in as an audience, you can look at Salima and say, this is very hard to play. But as a director, I know what it took for Hamida to play, what she did. And so these are very, very nuanced decisions you have to make. In my head, I was like, can't Tanvi play this character? Because she plays, she is who she is. And she plays the characters she plays. But no, she could. So those are fun, difficult things that you do when you're casting a show.
And then I guess one final question is, what advice would you have for aspiring young directors or theater students that are listening today?
Um, a couple of things, I think. One is watch as many shows as you can. You learn something from everything and everyone. So just watch, absorb, take notes, write things down. The second thing I would say is tell stories that you really want to tell. For me, for example, it's very important to be able to tell stories of South Asian origin and to bring those stories to life for people who have not maybe heard, seen, thought about them. But when you do tell these stories, make sure they're relevant and they vibe with the atmosphere and the environment that is today. Sometimes people will tell a story that is beautiful, but what does an 18 or a 20-year-old watching this take away? So think about that. But and keep your eyes and mind open. There are so many stories across the world to be told, and so you do not have to stick to a script. So think wide, and learn and absorb is what I will say.
Okay, and that ends my questions. Thank you so much, Miss Momita, for joining us today and sharing your insights into the arts of craft and directing. It was really fun to talk to you, and I think just the lot of insight you shared. It was very I'm very grateful for it.
No, absolutely. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you, Rohan. This was fantastic. Thank you.
Of course.